Wealth's Kenny Pocari, the Fitzgerald Group principal, Keith Fitz-Gerald, along with TJM Institutional Service Director, Jim Ario. Now, let me start with the Fed, guys. Everyone's saying the Fed's going to begin tapering this year, and that could mean for some even a rate hike early next year or next year at some point. Kenny, considering there hasn't been a 5% drawdown this year, with the course calling for the Fed taking away accommodation, what's holding this market up right now?
It's very interesting, Charles, that up until now, it's been that I think Jay Powell has done a very good job of not painting himself into a corner while acknowledging that they're having a conversation, has still refused to kind of put a date and a time on it. And so I think most investors are thinking, okay, maybe it's lower for longer, which is, I think, what's held the market up. My sense is, though, that is going to change because, like you said in your opening statement, there is more noise coming out of more of the Fed members that are very hawkish or appearing to be hawkish, that are very concerned about inflation being more than what he's led on to be. So I think it's just a matter of, it's going to be a matter of time here. I think it's going to be, in the next couple of days, we're going to see probably the tone change, I would think, unless Jay Powell comes out and once again is so successful in getting everyone to calm down.
Yeah, Keith, what do you think? What's going on? I mean, again, to Kenny's point, there's an old poem about a tree that made fun of the blade of grass that had always bent and swayed, but a big storm came through and the tree cracked and the blade of glass was still there. I mean, are we that big tree that when we do crack, we're going to crack big?
Well, I think Kenny's onto something. I think the sentiment is going to change very markedly within the next 24 hours. I think traders here, the markets have changed. I think they've simply got to be on the gas because they can't afford to miss the opportunity if Chairman Powell does thread that needle. So to me, the old days were about waiting for confirmation. Now you got to be in the scrum when the fight starts or you're going to miss most of the move.
Jim, I want to get your thoughts on that, but also this earnings parade. To me, it just continues to dazzle. This morning, in fact, we got that GDP revision. There wasn't a lot of news in there, but what stood out to me, corporate profits for the quarter, $2.78 trillion, by far the best ever. When you weigh everything that could move this market, shouldn't earnings be number one? Is that maybe a reason we're holding up here?
I wish it was number one. No, earnings are only the number one reason that a market moves if they come in terribly. If earnings are fair to good, we have this way of putting them on the shelf and concentrating on other things. You mentioned the Fed and the potential taper. First of all, they said they're concerned about the size of their balance sheet. For $4.5 trillion didn't concern them, but as we go beyond that, it does. That is just amazing to me. The point of the market that I'm trying to make is that the Fed being accommodative is important, but it's not the absolute level of accommodation. The market wants to believe that it's being slightly too accommodative more than the actual situation dictates. So I think that's more important. I think when you talk about $3.5 trillion spending packages coming out of the government, that's more important than earnings, unless earnings were bad, and then they take center stage. But we have a way of compartmentalizing them now.
Keith, I want to go back to you real quick and pick up on that point. Burlington blew away earnings. They crushed it on revenue, crushed it on earnings. Management gave no guidance, so the stock is getting crushed. In a situation like that, if you were holding that stock, and by the way, I am, what do you do? Do you say, okay, the street's right, I bail out, or do you look at the numbers and just think it's an overreaction?
No, because usually these analysts are wrong. If they miss expectations or they don't provide guidance, it leaves them flat-footed. So I'll certainly look twice, but I don't necessarily bail unless the business case for owning it disappears in the wind, too. If that's the case, I shut the door and I don't look back.
Okay. Kenny, on the other end of the spectrum, Williams-Sonoma, perhaps the stock of the day, people buying up those $4,500 espresso machines like the ones you have. Can the consumer, especially rich consumers, keep this economy and market going?
Well, it's interesting because in this environment, the rich are getting richer, as we say. And so there is a certain level. And you saw that in Williams-Sonoma's numbers today. Every metric, they were just blowing out of the water. Now, what I would say is as the situation changes, I think you have to just be cautious on some of the discretionary names. And stuff at Williams-Sonoma can be considered discretionary spending, right? And so depending on what happens, how fast the Fed begins to taper, what the talk is about any change in monetary policy, then you might see some pressure in the discretionary names. But for Williams-Sonoma point of view, there's a number of lines underneath them, right? There's West Elm, there's those couple of other businesses under there. They're all doing well.
Barn, all of them, they're all doing great.
Right, all of them. They were blowing, every one of them was blowing the roof off the house. And so in that sense, it's hard to argue against Williams-Sonoma, I would just be cautious on consumer discretionary names going forward. I would own it, but I would underweight it.
Okay. Hey, I got less than a minute to go. Jim, where's your target for this for the rest of the year? Higher or lower?
I still am bullish. I don't think the Fed. I think talking about taper is a lot different than actually tapering. I say 4,600 by the end of the year. Historically, if we're this strong coming in through August, the market finishes pretty well.
Right. I read that Kenny was at 4,500. I do want to real quick say I heard somewhere that the spatula has been thrown down. It's Jim versus Kenny. I will be deciding who is the best analyst, investor slash cook out there. Okay.
I'll be happy
I'll meet you guys in the city.
Look in your kitchen.
I'll get you both down.
All right, listen.
Hey, yeah, what about Keith? Right.
By the way, hey, Keith posts some amazing pictures of food, so he might be a ringer. Thank you all very much. It's a tough day, and you guys made it better.
That's all.
Amen.
There you go. We got a date. We got a date. All right, folks.
Hi, it's Keith here. Thanks for checking out today's highlight clip. What'd you think? Did I make sense? Is there something you'd like to add? Make sure you leave a comment down below, and of course, click subscribe to keep up right here on YouTube, or sign up for the email newsletter at the link below. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram for my real-time thoughts on markets, analysis, and a whole lot more.